Hello, good morning, good evening, good day, good afternoon, and aloha. Welcome back to another episode of the Unidentified Celebrity Review, your home for credible news, reviews, and commentary on everything UFOs. My name is Luis Jimenez. Thank you so much for coming aboard and getting weird with me. I want to say thank you to everyone who's joining us here in the chat. Christy, Bushi, Kate, Rodrigo, Shade, Shade of Gray, Naughty. Today we've got a great guest. So I'm not going to delay just because this is a live stream and I've got to fill this awkward silence with stuff. So here we go. So my guest today is a very cool dude, a friend of Lou Elizondo. He was in the stream chatting it up with you guys last week, which I thought was really cool. So I figured, hey, let's invite him on the show. And that is Mr. Sean Cahill. Mr. Cahill, how are you, sir?
Good, man. Nice to meet you.
Hey, it is a pleasure to meet you, man. I'm glad that we're on the same coast and this is not killing you as far as time frame is concerned.
No, easy peasy, man.
Awesome. Really awesome. By the way, everybody in the chat, and if you don't want to stick around for this, Sean, that's totally cool. But I'm going to put the StreamYard link in the chat at the end, probably in the last 20 minutes of the show. And we're going to take calls, just like I said, I'm going to set the rules right now. Don't be naked. Lower the volume on your YouTube channel or Facebook, whatever you're listening to. But yeah, and you're more than welcome to call and talk about whatever you want. So just be prepared for that. Okay, so I mean, dude, I've told you, sort of my format here. I try to get as much time from people as I possibly can. So we could really start anywhere. I think the first place I guess I'll start is, trying to get to know you, because I don't know a ton about you other than, what I've seen on Twitter and what I've seen in Unidentified. I've watched every single one of your YouTube clips, and it's weird, just the timing, and I'm sure you'll have a pretty fascinating, nuanced explanation for it. But that's the timing of just sort of how I was feeling spiritually and what I've been doing lately, sort of timed up with what you were talking about on your channel. So I wanted to know a lot more about your passions. I know you produce music. Are you a photographer as well, if I'm not mistaken? You do photography?
I do a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
I jack of all trades and master of none was something my father called me at a very young age. In a lot of ways, that does sum it up. I'm not the best at anything, but I've got a pretty good handle on a whole lot of things. So usually just enough to find somebody that can do it better to help me shape the vision that I might have been capturing with guitar or camera. That's all pretty brand new to me. Being an artist that's something that I think is probably life in one form or another. But
sorry. And by the way, God, I just want to apologize to everybody. I've got a really bad habit of cutting people off. I'm an improviser by nature. So anytime I hear even a moment of dead space, I jump in. The improviser in me, and you were just speaking about art, and I wanted to relate to you as an artist. So just please forgive me as a host and as just being a guest of mine. It is a fault of mine. I feel like it's something that I am working on constantly. So I'm sorry to interrupt you mid-thought. You continue.
Oh, no, it's cool. Something that really intrigued me about your format was that you told me you wanted to have a conversation. And yeah. I like getting to know the host as much as myself. I mean, some of the shows that I go on, they're highly informative. They're very topic related and topic based, but we do get to know each other a little bit better and a little bit differently in a format like this. So it doesn't bother me at all, man. Cut me off because I'll talk all day.
Yeah, all right, right on. Same here. I will also talk all day. So what I was going to ask is, I'm kind of fascinated with, and I don't want to talk about your military career just yet, but just being an artist and being this very open-minded person. What drew you to joining the military? What was it? Was it something like a family tradition, or was it something where you said to yourself, oh man, I need discipline, I need more structure, I need something in my life that sort of provides me, makes me do something that maybe I don't want to do? What was it?
It was a little bit of all of those things. Actually, I was in Southern California, living alone. Well, actually at the time I was living alone. I'd had some roommates that were new to my life that were in the entertainment industry, and I was a musician. And my friends had recently our failed move to LA and get famous venture as post high school teenagers.
Yeah.
We were living around the corner from Disneyland in Anaheim. So my last roommate went and joined the Navy, and I had been in being in the music industry in and around Garden Grove and Anaheim and Long Beach and LA. I ended up encountering narcotics here and there along my journey, for lack of a better phrase.
Right.
And it got more prolific as time went by, and it became something that was harder and harder to ignore. And I'm not perfect, but I kept an even enough keel that when the folks that were around me looked like they were going to become professional drug users instead of musicians, I kind of bailed on the music industry.
Yeah.
Cleaned up, and then followed in the footsteps of kind of in my father. He started, it's a long story there, but he started out in the Navy and then the Army Air Corps in World War II. And my grandfather was in the, I guess it was the Army, but Balloon Corps. There was a tradition there, but I needed to get the heck out of Dodge and change who I was. And I wasn't ready for any of it. So I kind of put a lot of the artistry and creativity behind at that point.
Interesting. Yeah, that's I had a friend on the show. He's a writer on he was actually the 4th or 5th episode I did. His name's Brian Shin, and he's a writer on that show called The Good Doctor. And before he was a writer on The Good Doctor, he was a professional poker player.
Oh, wow.
And I had no idea about this part of his life, none whatsoever. And when I started sort of grilling him on it, he was really good. And I was like, okay, well, I mean, if you were really loving this, why did you quit? And he says to me, I started looking around and I started seeing the people that I had become friends with, sort of the lives that they lead, and they were all professional gamblers. And I looked at myself and I said, do I want to be here in 15 years? And he's like, nope. So he started, submitting the writing programs, and I met him on a CBS fellowship. And he was a writer, I was a performer, and we just struck up a really cool relationship, and we're good friends today. And it was just interesting, like you saying that that's it takes a lot of introspection and discipline to even say to yourself and do something like that.
I really felt like I was seeing the edges of a life that I really didn't want to lead. And I feel really lucky. I can't take credit for that. That was, we're going to get into some of the weird tonight, but that was probably one of the first times in my life that I felt like something kind of grabbed me by the collar and shook me around and said, you don't know what you're doing, but go do this thing, kid, and you're going to be all right. And I feel like that lasted for a while. There was a I don't want to say guardian angel aspect to it, but there was a Jungian waking up of sorts that was beginning. That was like you have things you need to do, and you're not going to get them done over here,
right?
So. Well,
hey man, I guess it turned out great. So then you're like, okay, I need to get out of Dodge, and you went straight to the Navy.
Yeah. Well,
how old were you at this point? Sorry.
Oh, I was 20. Just turned 21.
Okay.
Yeah, it was shortly after my 21st birthday, in between 21st and 22nd.
All right.
And I'm 47 now.
So how did you go to recruiting office? So walk me through the process.
Yeah, I went down to the recruiter, and I wanted to be I went down, and the first thing they did is look at my ASVAB scores, which is a standardized testing a lot of us take in high school. And when I took mine in high school, I took it to get out of whatever class it was being. You went to the library to go do it, and you were out of that class for that day. So I went to the library and I just filled the whole thing in without caring for the answers, and then I jetted. and took the time off. Well, that made me eligible to be like a cook. And that was about it. So I was like, that's not representative of the person I am. How do I take this test again? So there was a delay while I had to retake the exam. But then they offered me a nuclear power technician and aviation electronics technician and all the top tier stuff. And I expressed an interest in being a Navy SEAL, and I went home with a soft contract for the Navy SEAL program with a secondary guarantee if I dropped that for nuclear power school. And at the time, the person I was living with had been in the Navy for 4 years and had washed out of both of those programs also. So he had been an influence on me. But when I got home, it was the opposite. He wasn't proud of me in any way, shape, or form. He was like, no, man, you're not cut out for those programs. He was like, that's a different kind of smart than you are. He was like, you're not going to make it like I would. Those guys, they've never paid their own bills and can't tie their shoes yet, but they can solve complex theorems. And I was like, oh, that's not usually the crowd that I hang out with.
Right.
So I asked, what about intelligence specialist? And it turned out in the Navy, that's somebody who it's more of an analyst, somebody who looks at a lot of photographs and stuff. And they said I had to go on 9 months delayed enlistment for that. And I thought to myself internally, I'm like, I'm not going to last 9 months more around these folks that I'm hanging out with. So I just went in as a non-designated seaman. I had no specialty. I went to after boot camp, there was a 3-week course intensive in seamanship. And then I shipped off to Guam to a shore facility to support a submarine tender.
What did your family say when you decided to do this? What were their thoughts?
I wouldn't say that we had more than one. So we had a lot of variety.
Wait, I'm sorry.
For the most part at the time, I was not.
Sorry. You completely broke up. We've got first world problems here right now where the Wi-Fi is having a problem catching up. Can you say that one more time?
Sure. I was the youngest, or I am the youngest of 8 children. And so we had a variety of folks in the family. So I wasn't the only black sheep. We were kind of like a half black and white flock, I was saying. And but at the time, my credibility wasn't too high with my family right after high school, moving down south like that. So everybody was kind of like, we'll believe it when we see it. Then when I graduated boot camp, there was a lot of support. And then after that, there was never ending support, to be honest. My family always supported, regardless of their politics or anything else, they supported me as a sailor. And they've always been wonderful like that.
That's very, I'm glad I asked you to repeat that, because that's some good information. Okay, so you get in. What is like well, of course, after you do something like boot camp, I also imagine that your family's gonna be like, okay, he means it. And yeah, I had that same thing when I told my family I was moving to New York City, because I was sort of in the same. I felt lost in a lot of ways, and I took a class, and as soon as I left that class, I was like, I'm moving to New York. I'm pursuing this acting thing. I'm going to do this. And then 2 months later, I was in New York City, and they did not think I was going until I left. And then I think it wasn't until 8 or 9 months in where they're like, okay, he's serious. Like he's actually trying to do this, and they became a lot more supportive. But of course, as any parent would worry about their child pursuing an art or an art form, it's like winning the lottery. You got to be really, really lucky. It's a combination of being lucky and being good. And I could tell you about a lot of bad luck that I've had in this town. Just bad timing, where I get a big part, and it's 2 seconds later they're calling me and they're like, sorry, the original actor just became available. Which is weird things that are totally out of your control, where you can't prepare any better than you can. So I I totally understand that. So tell me about your first, after you graduated or you did boot camp, and what's the first thing you do after that? Where do you go?
Well, you get 30 days of leave. Boot camp at that time is usually the most intense thing anybody has ever been through. Assuming they didn't escape some Eastern Bloc country and make their way across a large body of water, or escape Cuba, like a lot of folks have. Most people, boot camp is a real serious wake up call, unlike any other they've had. So that 30 days of leave is usually well deserved and much needed. For a lot of people, there's a lot of follow on training. For me, I had that training right after boot camp and then got the break. So I went home down to Southern California, right back into, where I was getting into trouble, and but stayed out of trouble. It was that kind of go home and, show folks, your dress blues. We all remember our friends coming back from high school, after they all disappeared into boot camp. You're eager to show off the new human being that you've become.
Right.
And you're eager to have that new start with people and say, listen, this is the new person I am, and it's better than the old one. And I had, in my bitterness, I'd robbed myself that from some of my family. I was glossing over, that whole "we'll believe it when we see it" part really got under my skin with some of my family members, and I created a gulf between us because of that. So there was a whole lot of proving to be done. So took that 30 days in SoCal and then reported to Guam. And that might as well have been like falling into a black hole in the 80s, because it's in the middle of the ocean. Most of the people I knew didn't know where that was at all, and that it was and it took a minute to take phone calls back home. And it was like $1,300 round trip to fly back home. And I was making about $250 to $300 a paycheck after taxes. So once the beer and cigarettes and Hot Pockets were bought, there wasn't a lot of money left for maintaining those relationships back on the mainland.
Right.
So, I kind of fell off the map for almost 4 years.
Do you think it's designed that way? Because maybe the Navy wants your focus for the time. It's not like that
anymore.
Yeah. Okay.
It's not. No. Back then they had like a bookstore the size of my closet on the island. It's only 32 miles long and 8 miles wide. It's a wonderful place now. It's been built up. I mean, it was a wonderful place then. It's actually more of a paradise then. But there was no internet, and we didn't all have cell phones and global communication, over WhatsApp and stuff like that.
Right.
So I think that's what was going on. There was all the people that I worked for when I first came in the Navy were all Vietnam vets that were on their way into retirement.
That's, I'm sure, intimidating.
It's funny. They were a great bunch of guys, but looking back now, you judge people based on where you end up after a career. You look back at the people that were your first mentors, and I'm like, man, these guys were all like a bunch of, I mean, in the nicest sense, a bunch of late 70s burnouts that just were like, man, I guess I'll just stay in the Navy, man. Nom was pretty bad. So
yeah, hope to never do that again.
Yeah. So it was really interesting compared to then follow on 20 years that we've had here with Iraq and Afghanistan. So very different.
Totally different conflicts and situations for sure.
Yeah,
but I feel just as impactful and devastating in a lot of ways.
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, so you're on Guam. How did you end up, I guess, what was your total career in the Navy? How long?
20 years.
20
I
years.
often say 20 years and not a day more. And that's just kind of out of spite, because they almost got me longer, because I had one last case right before I retired.
Okay. So how did you get from Guam to, I guess what were the steps? Like, what did you do to
Sure.
get to the position where you were on the Princeton?
So being on, I had a talk that I used to give guys that, you know, before court martial later on, that when I wanted to help save them, keep them in the service, where I would say, you know, 20 years from now, when you're talking to your children or your grandchildren or whatever, do you want to tell them that when you served that you know, that you swabbed the deck for a few months and then you got kicked out for some stupid mistakes, or do you want a chance to make good on the original commitment that got you here? And somebody gave me a similar talk. So I applied for the police academy and for the Master at Arms program, basically, is what that was. And at the time, there were only certain circumstances that people in lower pay grades could apply to it. And I made the criteria and sent off the package. And because they were moving our personnel office from one city to another, there was a lot of paperwork that was juggled around during that period of time. And so it got really strung out longer and longer and longer. And I had made arrangements back in Southern California for a job. I had gone through the steps to get out of the Navy. It was time for my first enlistment to be up. And when the orders never came in for that school, I was ready to leave. I was like 3 weeks away from getting out when the orders finally came in. And I was pretty angry about getting yanked around. And a mentor of mine pulled me aside and basically gave me that talk and convinced me to stay in. And so I left 3 weeks later, canceled all those other plans, and left for San Antonio, Texas, where I went to what we call Master at Arms A School, which is an anti-terrorism / police academy school. And then followed that with what's called corrections school to learn how to run the brig, basically like learn how to be a prison guard. On a which has a little different on a ship that can flood and things like that, or have you know, expectant fires possible. But that's where you know,
Okay.
the delays and everything. My wife was only in town for 3 days.
Okay, yeah, no, you got cut off again on the like the last two sentences you said. What did you say on the last two sentences?
I said all the timing was pretty interesting because I met my wife while I was at that school. It was just a one hit.
Was she going to school there too?
She was only in town for 3 days.
Wow.
Her friends had paid for her tickets and like practically required her to go to this conference down there. So the amount of serendipity around that meeting was just crazy, you know, when we recounted it all.
Huh. Yeah, that is pretty wild. So what? And you met her in this 3 days. You got her number, and you guys just kept in contact, I guess, through.
Precisely. Yeah. No. There was our meeting could take up a 45-minute story in itself.
Yeah.
But she got pointed out to me by a random stranger who was sitting by me, and I was like, "Who's that? You know, like, why are you? Let go of my arm, lady. And who is this?" And the lady goes, "Oh, she's the girl you're gonna marry." And I was like, "Get the heck out of here!"
Yeah.
And but I was superstitious enough to be like, "I'll go buy her a beer."
Okay.
So I go buy her. I'm not going to say the line because it was horrible, and I didn't use lines back then, but it was just bad. It had to do with karma.
Now you have to share the line.
You
set it up. Now you have to.
You're right. That was horrible.
I mean, look, you're already married. You're already married. You know, might as well give the cheesy line. Let's get the real juice.
It's bad. It's embarrassing.
Everyone wants to know.
It was something like, okay, so here's the thing. We've been looking for this bar for 3 months. We couldn't find it. It was an Irish pub. I wanted a Guinness with a proper pour on it and everything. And they had been doing construction. There was a sign in the way. And this night, the sign's finally gone. Yeah. So we're in there, and I mosey up next to her in line when she's ordering, and I think I was gonna buy her a drink. I think, and it didn't work out that way. She ordered a Budweiser, and I think I was disappointed. And I think I was like, "Hey, you don't look like somebody that would usually order a Guinness, so maybe you'd like a Harp." And then I kind of like felt like a jerk, like I sounded, and I kind of rogered out with like, "Well, I said something about karmic debt. I was like, do you know the karmic debt? It was bad, dude. It was just,
Woo!
it was crap.
Man, you must have been looking really good that night.
I don't.
I mean,
I don't
there was something
so.
going on. There was something.
I don't think so.
Yeah, well, clearly, you got kids.
Well, she showed up. She said no. She took a sip of her bud and walked away. And I'm like, yeah, that crashed and burned. I go sit down. She shows up 10 minutes later telling me, see, people are going to get the wrong idea about my hat. It was a leftover hat from I have to explain it, but it was a leftover hat from Operation Pacific Haven, where regular military folks, we had handlers during this operation helping us get these Kurdish refugees out that were representatives from the CIA. So this is going to be the worst. People are going to make up crap about this because it doesn't exist. But basically, I got one of the ball caps from them, and it ended up being my ratty softball ball cap. So it's this piece of crud black ball cap that has these CIA letters stitched in front with all this red clay from Guam in it. And she walks up to me and she goes, if you're trying to pick up girls in this outfit and with that hat on, it's a little intimidating and it ain't working. Yeah. And I was like, what? And I never wore that hat again.
Hey, man.
But then again, funny. I never dated another girl again either.
Yeah, that's you never got to really test it out. But that's funny because I've had girlfriends of mine be like, hey, you should try this one thing, and it worked. It worked immediately. And I was like, wow, okay, great. It was like changing a profile picture or something like that. It was so simple. I was like, oh, I didn't realize I was giving off that vibe.
We've been married 20 years now, and it's been, we were just both real that night. And even when it's been not easy, we've always been real with each other.
Yeah.
And I think that's been our secret.
Well, that's a good little nugget right there. I'm just now getting into that relationship status where it's like, okay, I think this is the move, and the thing is, like, we moved in together in February of last year, which was right before all of this madness went down, literally the month of it. And I said to myself, okay, well, if I don't want to kill her by the end of this year, she doesn't want to kill me. I think that's a good sign. And here we are. It's been a year, and we had in the new year we've had one big argument. It was over something so stupid, and I was like, babe, we just started our new diet. We're not having any sugar. I think this is just a sugar fight right now that you and I are having. And we sat back. We're like, yeah, that's exactly what it is. And that, so immediately, okay, this is going to work. But anyway, so what was your first gig coming out of this program? You graduate. And so what do they, I mean, is it, I picture like Top Gun where he opens his locker and it's like, he's got a letter and it's like, congratulations, Mr. Cahill. You've been selected to, join us on the USS Princeton or whichever ship you or how'd it go? I'm interested.
Well, it's funny because I worked my butt off in that class, and so did my fellow classmates. We had we were a really tight knit class. We had a very high class GPA, and we were all fighting to get what we called Top Gun, because we called, that's the Top Gun in every class, the Top Gun school, all of that.
You just dropped a major nugget on me. I'm thinking Top Gun is just a thing for guys
the number one.
Playing. That's
the number one.
Okay, so you could be a Top Gun in any part of the military.
Well, yeah, you're the guy. Especially in a police academy, the Top Gun. You're all everybody. So it's not the exact same, but it's the same thing. It's where the name comes from. You're the best of the best. So so we were all bucking for that because you had your choice of orders. We had people that didn't have guaranteed follow-on programs. Like I had a guarantee for the brig school. Some other people had guarantees to be canine and dog handlers. And some people of higher rank might have had follow-on orders to be investigators, which is something I ended up doing later in my career once I got there. But other people were opting for Top Gun. So the orders that they could ask for was one of those follow-on schools that they hadn't already negotiated. So I ended up getting, man, I can't remember if I got it or not. I want to say that there was, I don't think I did. I think it was off by like this one uniform inspection where I had taken the laundry tag off and gotten blood on my dress whites or something and got like 1 point off, and that my buddy, and that's what happened now that I recall it. My buddy ended up getting Top Gun instead. But I still got the orders I wanted. So I went to the USS Constellation out of San Diego.
Okay.
I immediately upon graduation, I think I got to spend a week or two with my family, and then I flew to San Diego and then flew out to Mazatlan and flew on board the carrier. So my first introduction to the sea, not like, you know, like the land with Guam was landing on an aircraft carrier and getting hustled across the flight deck and into a crew of thousands of people and trying to find my way around there. It was pretty interesting.
Wow. So it's kind of like first day of high school. Sounds like almost.
Yeah.
But instead of your mom dropping you off and embarrassing you in front of the school, it's you're just getting out of a helicopter and nobody's like, all right, see you later. Everybody's just more like, good luck. Wow, that's pretty wild. Okay, so I know this might sound like a silly question, but obviously there is crime aboard ships. You know, how much, enough to where you have an entire division of police officers and people sort of patrolling the good guys. How much crime does happen on a ship? Is it most of it pretty petty? Because look, my dad was a police officer. He was a robbery detective. So I've seen some pretty wild cases, and a lot of them were mostly just stick ups, you know, in like a liquor store or you know, like a fast food joint or something like that. But sometimes it'd be really just crazy where they just beat up an old lady and just to take her purse. It's just like, why can't you just ask her for her purse? Why'd you have to beat her up? Or like German tourists. Oh my God. They got robbed all the time in Miami, all the time. It was like, how many German tourists got robbed? I didn't even know why we had that many German tourists until my stepdad just came with case after case with these German people. It's like, dude, this is wild. So how much crime is happening and how heinous is it versus how, you know, somebody stole my iPod, but like figure it out. When somebody gets some, you know, some fingerprints, man. I know it was you, Casper. You know, like there's a lot of variety, and there's a lot of aspects that'll change that. But I would say that in general, the Navy, our statistics that we would have would show us that the Navy was a slightly better behaved microcosm of American culture. In general, we had the same trends. In general, we had the same amount of crime per capita. But over the course of years, I saw that change a lot. You know, I came into the Navy and heard stories of race riots on board the carriers, you know, where you have the thousands of folks and you have an entire berthing that might just be one ethnicity because they'd shuffled themselves up. There were a lot of things in the 70s and 80s that we would really look back at now and just be like, that happened openly in the military. And yeah, it sure did. So the amount of a lot of people would have said, well, that was self-imposed segregation. And I think that without getting too into the weeds of it, I think we can look at our prison system to say, okay, well, yeah, that's self-imposed segregation too, but it's for the same survival traits, or it's coming from the same survival traits that it was for the folks in the post-Vietnam era too. But so I remember a time when people would divide up, not as all navy blue like we used to say, but along different lines. On a carrier, it's really not that. It's a little bit worse than on the smaller ships because of the amount of folks, and you can get away with stuff and kind of blend into the crowd. But in general, it really comes down to a lot of the leadership
how the crew is treated by the upper chain of command, how confident they feel in themselves to be ambassadors, how much ownership they have of that, the moral ethic of being a part of that crew. You know, like when we pull into a port, you're an ambassador to that country. It doesn't matter if you're the lowliest seaman on the crew or the admiral in charge of the whole fleet. Each one of us, we make the same mistake, it becomes the same international news. So you have to have a better understanding of that. So
your responsibility also extended when you pulled up the port and those guys wandered the streets of the port. That's also your jurisdiction, essentially.
We would be the people in these cases, the master at arms. That phrase next, this is my mug from the USS Princeton, and
oh, cool.
That's got my rating symbol on it, which is sheriff's badge, and then the chevrons and rocker and crow of our patch. But that symbol comes from the days of sail, when there was one person highly trained on board in muskets and cutlasses and how to train boarding parties and things like that. And so that's where the title comes from. And we took on a lot more responsibility over time, and things ebb and flow. But that comes from the same place where we have we're the folks that are training the folks that are out there. I feel like I lost the train of thought on that one.
No, that's okay. No, we were there's a lot going on here. So it's, you know, you kind of blow my mind a little bit with kind of what you're saying. I never realized that, you know, but somebody said in the chat, it makes sense. A carrier is kind of like a small city, you know, on the water. And so, you know, I'm trying to catch up with what you're saying here, and it's wild. So you said that was going on more toward the 80s, early 90s, and you became the chief master of arms. Is that correct?
Yeah, I right around the time that I had a few shore duties, and then I had a stint on shore duty at Naval Air Station North Island during and after. But then when I ended up on Princeton, after I got on board was when I was selected for Chief Petty Officer. And so I spent more than half of my career as a Chief Master at Arms. Yeah.
Did you come across a lot of homicides?
No.
Were on a ship? Not too many, right? I would imagine it's...
No, very few on board. In fact, in my entire career, there were on board the ship, we dealt with numerous suicide attempts and what we called suicidal ideations, where people express an intent anywhere on the spectrum of harm where they require immediate care. But we had some people succeed on a few occasions, unfortunately. As far as homicides go, I never had a homicide on board a ship, but in my last command that I was attached to, the USS Peleliu, we had a horribly unfortunate murder that was committed by a U.S. Marine Corps service member in the Philippines while we were there. And
off ship or on ship? It
was off ship. Yeah, okay. It was off ship, and it was a large incident, and that was my last case. That was actually right before I was supposed to leave to go home to retire.
Wow.
Yeah.
What a bummer to go 20 years only to get that one as your last case. Well, I guess, you know, that's a good thing, I guess, being a police officer on a ship, is that you don't have to come across a lot of homicides, you know, like maybe say an LA cop or, you know, a Chicago police officer or something like that.
There was a friendly fire accident when I was on the USS Macon Island. But other than that, no, not. I have a very good friend of mine that everybody will end up getting to know in the next couple of years, who's also named Sean. And he was a homicide detective for 20 years. And he makes me feel like a mall cop, you know. he really does. I mean, he's the first one that's going to say that I'm not, but Yeah, there's
I can
not much more.
understand that. Yeah, no, I mean, look, man, those to be a homicide cop, forget it. I don't even want to think about some of the stuff they see. This was an interesting question. I was just like, how much smoothing things over with local cops do you have to do after, shore leave over seaman? Is that a lot?
Yeah, that's a really good question. We actually, my position and that of on a larger ship like a carrier or an amphibious readiness group like the Peleliu or the Macon Island, on the flagships you'll usually have, along with myself, if you're lucky, an NCIS agent who's resident on board. And the two of us will often fly in ahead of time on the ports to do surveys for the ship, find out what's going on with the local police and everything else. But in a lot of cases, we are the folks that are going out there and yeah, having those conversations with the local authorities, finding out what it's going to take to get our guys back if they're over there. We have to be experts on what's the status of our status of forces agreement, if there is one with that nation, et cetera. And so those are plans and things that we execute and train the upper chain of command and the crew on before we pull in, so everyone's prepared.
Man, that's pretty wild. I'm sure. Have there been how many cases where a seaman goes offshore and he gets maybe arrested for something that he didn't do?
Very rarely.
Very rarely. Okay. Because I didn't want to lead with the other question was how many what's some of the more heinous things you've seen these guys other than murder, but like what are these guys getting into drunken shenanigans, or are they like doing real crimes?
I'll say that it's a mixture of drunken shenanigans, which get way out of hand. The fact that we have a phrase in almost every law enforcement training program that you'll encounter when it comes to theft, that we almost get more angry with the good innocent people who leave their crap unlocked than we do with the bad guys, because unfortunately, whether you like it or not, and whether people are clutching their pearls and saying, I'd never do that. A lot of folks, an honest man turns into a thief when he sees that thing that he can't have or afford sitting out there unattended.
Yeah.
You get a lot of petty theft, a lot of alcohol related incidents, and those are the big ones. There were a lot of DUIs. The violence usually, I shouldn't even say the violence. I wouldn't even say there's any protracted violence in the Navy like that. In the same way, you get your occasional scuffles and fist fights and things like that in close quarters after months out to sea.
Yeah.
But in a lot of ways, a lot of those things can be handled at the lowest level, and they don't have to necessarily go all the way up to the sheriff, so to speak. We have a chief petty officers in the Navy who are a distinct subset of the ranking system that is unlike one in any other service, save possibly the Coast Guard, that kind of has a very interesting pivot place between the regular, what we call regular enlisted folks, and then the officers. It has a lot to do with the sovereignty of the sea. In the ancient day, not the ancient days, but in the old days of sail and before instantaneous communication, the captain of the ship had to be sovereign authority out there. He wielded the ability to pass a sentence of death, and he needed to be able to hold the discipline of his crew and ensure that there'd be no mutiny when a British ship was all the way around by Tahiti, for example. So that's where we get a lot of those traditions and things. A lot of them have come a long way.
What is the longest that you've been out at sea?
I think it was 3 months.
Okay.
We actually measure that by how many beers were rationed during a certain amount of time, because after, I can't remember what they are anymore. Somebody can probably Google it pretty quick.
Right.
There's a certain amount of time we're out there, and then the forklift comes up with a pallet of beer, and everybody gets to go up and have this one lukewarm beer. Sometimes it's O'Doul's, and but we make a party of it, try to hit some golf balls off the flight deck and have a barbecue.
Oh, that's funny. Well, I was just watching like this infographic show about life on board of an aircraft carrier, and sort of this idea of, just like you said, hitting golf balls off the flight deck. Like, how rare is doing something like that?
Honestly, on most of the ships I was on, even when we were in the thick of it, in fact, especially when we were in the thick of it doing boarding operations in the Northern Arabian Gulf and around the oil platforms, in those cases, sometimes almost every weekend, if it wasn't we would do as much as we could. And you'll like always, you'll get people who are like, I never heard of that, and you're going to get other people that are like, yeah, we did that all the time. Yeah. But we would have like a holiday routine on a Sunday, and the folks that were on watch would be driving the ship while the rest of us tried to blow off some steam, and literally pulled the barbecues out on the deck, and some kiddie pools and stuff like that. Turned on the stereo, put on your civilian bathing suit, and just pretended you were just folks for a little bit before you had to go back on watch yourself, and you brought your buddy some ribs, and he ran out and did the thing, and you make do.
That brings me good relief, is because this thing I was watching kind of made it sound like it was a prison almost, like the small conditions, like the bathroom situation where you've got one bathroom and 1,400 men. The sleeping quarters when people board the ship, and there's not enough room for them to stay anywhere, and just things get awkward, and the food, they say they try to keep the food as good as possible, because good food will sort of lift your morale. If you're eating good, you can sort of put up with all of the mundane stuff that you have to do, and also just this situation where you don't get to look outside, because they say the flight deck is a place where people rarely get to go, because it's a runway. You can't have people on the flight deck. Like, if a plane or helicopter is like, you need to not be there. You could get killed. So I was like, man, God, like, who the hell would sign up for this? But you made me feel a little better. You guys are having barbecues and you're letting off some steam, having a beer, getting some ribs in. So that's nice to hear. Okay, so I guess how long was it before, this whole, well, I mean, I guess I don't even know, because it's a good transition to sort of what happened on the Nimitz, but I kind of wanted to get into some other aspects of your life, like your passions. We ended up just talking about your military career, and I want to save that part because I feel like that's a good workup to sort of current events. But I want to go back and I want to talk a little bit about your YouTube channel a little bit, because I found it just a wonderful piece of. I mean, I tweeted it out. I know you don't have a ton of videos, you don't have a ton of followers, but I think there's some really wonderful advice and wonderful gems of just things that you're saying, especially when you were working on that spoon. So it's like, oh man, you've hit on something here. Not only are you're creating art, which is in its own way, that is a meditation in itself. When you're drawing or when you're painting or when you're creating something, time changes, things move differently when you're in those zones. And so, I found that incredibly interesting. And then also your takes on meditation and sort of what you can do, because, and I'm just going to say his name, Stephen Greer. A lot of people have a lot of feelings about it. I just did a video about him and how sort of his tax returns reveal kind of what he's up to. But just because he's a little bit of a charlatan on the financial end of things doesn't mean that at the core of what he's saying might not be, might be valid. But what you suggested I thought was wonderful. I hadn't even thought of this. If you're going to do a CE5 event, like maybe bring out some instruments, some things to measure, you know, apps to look at airplanes or satellites in the atmosphere. So you can make sure whatever this person is telling you you're looking at, you can verify, you know, okay, yeah, that's either not there or that is most definitely there. And this is what it is. So I thought those are, yeah, go for it.
I've encountered enough weird stuff in my life that, and you know, we're talking tonight because of UFOs. They don't have to be the constant subject,
right?
But that's why we're here, and that's a weird subject for most people. And yeah. You've dipped your feet into UFO Twitter. Shout out to all the folks. You know, thanks for supporting us because
and a lot of them are here.
We're the vanguard of the folks who have a handle as to what this is, as opposed to just the folks who only see History Channel here and there, or these other entertainment shows that present some of this in a semi-educational manner. Well, that's not who we are, and that's not where we came from. So anyways, we're here because of that. And man, lost my train of thought. What'd you say? We're sorry.
No, I want to
pop into my head.
That's okay. What popped in your head? We were talking about sort of the art aspect of things, but just
you were talking about my channel is kind of like me scribbling on the whiteboard in the kitchen downstairs. I went through a lot of my life where I tried to muscle my way into happiness.
Yeah.
And I thought that I could think my way into situation, you know, the kind of life that I wanted to. I thought it was very cerebral. And I wasn't always that way. You know, when joining the military had started the change. Part of the bigger story of the Tic Tac in 2004 for me wasn't the fantastic aspect of it. It was the fact that the way everybody reacted, I went, well, this is probably our military. And I just stopped caring about anything that was what we call magical or interesting or paranormal, etc. You know, I'm at the point now where I try not to use phrases like paranormal, because to me, there's just normal we haven't figured out yet. Everything's normal. There's nothing that's beyond normal. There's even the abnormal is normal because it happens. You know? So these things they're kind of all over the map. And for some people, the way that they're presented, it's so delicate. Sometimes. Because we're trying to educate people on stuff that has not always been, they really are going to have to elbow each other and get consensus before they're going to turn back around and say, okay, now give it to us again and give it to us straight.
Yeah.
You know, people are just kind of waking up to, wait a second, what do you mean these interpersonal relationships that we're all having, our consciousness, all these other things that are new to a lot of people, I feel like they're interwoven. So now I'm finding what I was kind of talking about again, because I encountered some changes in my life that told me, man, being better feels really good. Like being a better person feels way better than any free lunch I ever got in my life.
Right.
You know, and I was an agnostic kind of guy. I grew up Catholic, but I buried that really early on because old stories and all that stuff didn't make sense to me. There was too many animals for one boat. And then, you know, I didn't feel anything inside. And so I was like, well, I'm out of here. You know, and I was one of those folks that then went and tried every hat on I could find, looking for this feeling all these other people were talking about. Right. And I didn't find it until I finally, for me, it was all about surrender, and surrendering to the idea that I found myself looking around me and feeling like everyone else around me was an a-hole. And I had enough education to know that that's not the way it is. When you're in that situation, it's you.
Right.
And so I was lucky enough that my wife stuck around for me to go. I went and got a therapist, and I walked in the office and I was like, I'm an a-hole, and I'm trying. I don't want to be. I'm not trying to make excuses to keep being one. And at that, I had started meditating with Sam Harris, who's a well-known agnostic or atheist. And so I felt like I didn't know how to take Buddhist advice, because I had soured on religion in general. And I know Buddhism now, as somebody who basically practices Buddhism, I know it's not a religion, it's just a philosophy.
Right.
But none of us, we're all so very ignorant. And I don't think I'm any better than anybody else. But I started that YouTube channel because I was like, I don't care if I'm ever famous, but I feel like some of these insights, there's a requirement to share them. You know, the first guy, what if I was the only one who knew?
Yeah.
What if I was the only one who felt that way? Man,
well, I got to tell you, I think you're really on to something. As you were making that spoon, I was connecting with it. I was like, man, he is philosophizing to us while doing a meditative activity. So I found it like double pleasurable, you know, like, because I'm getting a little lesson, while I feel like I could also now, with the proper tools, go build a wooden spoon. Like, I kind of want to try it, you know, the artist in me wants to go maybe do that. Hey, man, I think I can try that wooden spoon. But before I continue, I just wanted to give a quick shout out to It's Redacted. Golly, man, I'm such a huge fan of you guys. It's insane. And they say hello. So I just wanted to point that out really quickly. And of course, everybody else out there is incredibly important. Marco, Bushi, you guys know I love you. But man, that I caught that in the chat, and I just had to point it out because I am a fan of you guys. So thank you for being here. Big shout out. Thank you. Okay. It's funny, you know, you say that because I'm sort of at that part in my life now too, where I'm like, Jesus, damn, am I an asshole? I grew up Catholic, you know, because there was a line that you'd said, and it hit me. It was like, you know, you got to check your own shit before you start taking shits on all these other things, you know. And I was like, wow. I was like, man, that makes sense, you know. Like, damn, that's some deep shit. And so I'm like, yeah, you know, like. Because a lot of my show is taking a shit on things. Like, I review things. That's what I do. But like, I don't like being lied to. I don't like to be to feel like I'm being taken for a ride. And so when I feel like I'm being taken for a ride, I'm going to call it out. And that's just my nature. But I took what you said to heart, and it's just interesting because at this moment in my life, I've been looking for that. I grew up Catholic as well. And I abandoned that, just absolutely abandoned it, because again, exactly what you said, the stories, the boats, it's just like, Jesus, this is a fairy tale. I'm being pitched a fairy tale. And I started realizing, especially when I'm doing something like making a spoon or painting or doing something like that, I found that the God, whatever it is you want to call it, that I'm looking for is in the details of the things that I'm doing. And I was
that's
like,
beautiful.
That's where God is for me. I'm not saying you can put that on anybody else, but for me, God lives in the details of the things that you do. So, you know, I try to constantly remind myself of that. But what's interesting is I've been, and I haven't even told this, straight up, incredibly vulnerable confession. I haven't even told my girlfriend this. I've been praying at night before I go to sleep. I've been going back to praying, you know, doing my Catholic prayers, and it makes me feel really good. I don't believe in it, you know, but there's something to be said. It's almost like floating in the ocean and feeling the ocean, you know, there's a connection there. When you look up into the galaxy, like this, something is connecting there. And the smaller we get scientifically, the more we kind of are admitting, like, there's a creator. Something is here that we just can't put a finger on. But go ahead, yeah.
Well, you said something earlier that I'm gonna round it off really quick before I move on. But you said you know, about what we were both talking about with, you know, too many animals on the boat is nonsense and all that. For me, the beauty of coming through this and not out the other side as a Catholic or a Christian, because I'm not. I'm not anything. I'm just Sean. You know, and I cherry pick the hell out of everybody else's stuff unapologetically. But I found this piece of me again that was willing to go back to the stuff that I thought was nonsense and then finally find the lessons that were worth it out of there. You know, looking at what portion of our history this came out of and looking at it for other meaning. But there was something that came to me through this process that was like, I've been, let me tell you a short story. I found myself in line at the grocery store one day, and I realized I had spent all morning in anxious pain, like almost physical pain of anxiety, because I didn't want to get in a certain line and have to listen to this one dude who was a checker. I didn't like the way he interacted. And looking back, it's laughable to me that I was so fragile, that I had to have like an escape plan to get out of the grocery store to not make myself angry. But I remember sitting in line one day and right before I started making these changes, and I was like, man, you're an idiot. You hate the old man at the grocery store who's never done anything but call you my friend and ask you how you're doing, and you don't care for him. Yeah. And so that was when I discovered what they call meta meditation. And that's where, in a very simplistic fashion, you work up to wishing your worst enemies love and peace and tranquility and hoping that they find the healing in themselves. And I mean, it's some wishy-washy woo-woo stuff to most manly men out there. Yeah. But my heart cracked open effectively. And I was like, oh, Jesus, this is, I remember part, you know, no pun intended, but I was like, oh, Jesus, I remember what it's like to be human a little bit again. Yeah. It's not about standing up here ready to slap down whoever disagrees with you. It's about going, I haven't looked about it that way. Nothing's on fire. Let's look at it again together and see if we, you know, there's different ways to do things. And I just think it's super powerful. So when you talk about me doing a meditative thing like carving a spoon, I think a lot of people who don't think of themselves as having the ability to meditate. And again, meditation just means honing focus for those of us who aren't going to go join a monastery. You know, it just means quiet your crap long enough to realize that some of your crap, you don't have to own it. It almost floats over you like a stream. You know, like your stream of thought is almost like this bunch of stuff that's flowing by you up above your head. And if you just chill for a second, you realize you're the one that's pulling the nonsense out of that stream and holding on to it tight for 3 or 4 days and making a mess of things, you know?
Right. No, it makes perfect sense, you know, and it's, I just found it perfect timing, your channel and sort of this conversation. I was just like, man, I'm so glad that I'm talking to you. You know, I'm so glad. It's serendipitous is the word I'm looking for. You know, where all of these things just come together, and I feel like I'm Kate Beckinsale right now, and you're sweeping me off my feet. Okay. All right. So
I feel lucky because there's a million other people out there doing what I was doing. And so I feel really confident that people are going to be learning, even if nobody ever sees my channel. And I really appreciate your sentiment, but I know there's other folks out there with a lot bigger audience that are doing what I'm doing too.
Yeah, well, who cares? Right. You know, who cares? I really don't.
No, I'm applauding them. That's what I'm saying.
I'm saying, great for them. But I mean, you know, the more the merrier. As far as I'm concerned, you know, I think I've never seen that where somebody is whittling something and giving you, you know, life lessons. I'm all for that because it keeps my attention. Because, like you said, it was almost a form of meditation with me just not having. Because that was going to be one of my questions for you. Was like, man, I really want to get into meditation, but how do I do it? And just you already answered the question. It was just like, yeah, you do things that require your absolute attention and focus and quiet your brain where nothing else. And that could be sweeping the floor.
Absolutely.
You know, so that's a great nugget. I'm gonna nib on that one for a while and take that on for the rest of my life because I think that's good stuff. Okay, let's see here. Yep, we're getting weird for sure. So okay. I think we've got a pretty good handle. You know where I didn't? Where were you? Were you born in California or born and raised on the West Coast?
No, I was born in Atlanta. in Georgia. I was premature and at a very low birth weight, and
but you're a pretty big guy now.
Yeah, I got really lucky. I had last rites when I was preemie, and basically they told my parents we don't think he's going to make it, but Emory University has a program where they're developing a experimental zero pressure bubble and incubator, and so they medevaced me to there. And chances are it was the highly oxygenated environment that because they prepared my parents for a slew of physical defects that I should have had, up into including a great deal of cognitive defects.
Mm. And was that a struggle growing up?
Well, no, none of it.
Once you got through it, no.
No, I had my legs were pointed the wrong way, and I wore a brace on my feet. I always had a huge cabeza, so I've always had to just deal with big head jokes.
What size head do you have, or what size hat do you wear?
This part of my head is 7 1/4, but the problem is the 700 miles between my giant chin and the rest of it. So there's a picture out there of me.
Wait, when you were at sea, you were a second landing strip.
There's a picture of me out there all jocked up, and I'm wearing a black baseball cap because the Kevlar helmets didn't fit my huge bucket.
Oh man, well I can tell you right now, I had the biggest helmet on the football team, and with the hair that I've got right now, it's I probably need an 8-inch hat. Like I usually wear 7 3/4. That's with a haircut. So I've got this way, like the circumference of it this way, probably more, more grape size, more squishy. But yeah,
nowadays because of my bun, I get confused as a huge lady from behind. So
I come on, I doubt that's happening very often, unless you're wearing a dress and heels. Is there something else you want to tell us on this show?
Excuse me.
Okay, so all right, so let's go back to let's talk about this UFO. Let's talk about this day and what the hell happened and what you were doing and what you experienced. And for anyone who's new to this story or new to the show and it hasn't heard Sean's story, I guess, after would you say this was the most interesting week of your job?
Of my job. Up until that point.
Of your career? I don't want to call it your job. A job sounds like you're working at 7-Eleven or something.
A job for sure. We'd filmed a couple of movies on set on the at my precinct and on board. I was on board USS Constellation when they filmed Pearl Harbor. So having Ben Affleck and Alec Baldwin and people running around my ship while I was trying to enforce good order and discipline, and one of the famous folks that was there was like kind of stumbling around in their uniform. So that was weird. That was weird to I yelled at Alec Baldwin. Let me just put it that way.
Really?
I don't know if he remembers it, but he was coming up the stairs and his uniform was all akimbo, and I was like, "What the hell are you doing? Button your shirt up, button." And he looks up at me, and I was like, "Carry on, sir," and just just went back to where I was. Up until recently, my wife had a printout of Ben Affleck. I took a picture of him, so that was weird and cool and everything, and that's about as weird and cool as it ever got. And so in 2004, I would say that it was probably all business as usual until I woke up that morning and Kevin and the other guys told me to go check my email and look at that video. Even the stuff that I saw in the sky that night, it was weird. I'd never seen lights or aircraft, move like that before, but it was just lights in the sky without context to me. I didn't have any kind of spiritual awakening event or anything like that. I didn't feel, no physical effects or anything that I've come to have a better understanding that people do encounter with the phenomenon. But no, that's kind of That's kind of what it was like.
So when you click open your email, what's the first of all, the email that you clicked on, I wonder if this is classified. Was it longer than the video we've seen?
Oh, I've talked about the video that you've seen is the same one that I saw. I even remember what it was called. I have a weird memory for that, but it was something like NOV_15 or 14 COND, and I'm pretty sure the COND stood for condensed. Because what I recall and what I've seen and compared as things have come out with memory and notes that I took was that they cut out all of the major phase changes that the craft went through. You know, if they changed the lens, they gave a portion of that. If they changed focal distance, they gave a portion of it. So it was a portion of everything, and they were able to squirt that over to us, you know, from the other ship over the SIPR net that we were utilizing. But I knew immediately. I was kind of like, holy crap, we've got footage of these things. Like I had a clue at this point that we were chasing, you know, unidentifieds. You know, we were joking about UFOs a little bit towards the end of the watch, and we were getting a clue. And I think by that time, Kevin Day had probably, you know, given me a better idea. But seeing that, I knew that what I was looking at was like nothing I'd seen on any other gun camera footage whatsoever before, or on any other FLIR module that I had operated in a different manner, you know, from whether it was from a gun emplacement or whether it was handheld thermal imaging. This was I had an idea what I was looking at, and that thing should have had wings. It should have had a lot of other things going on.
Well, so, it should have had that temperature.
Yeah, absolutely. No, totally. It should have. There was a lot of things going on, and there were 3 guys standing behind me, and I recall who they were, and all of them were smiling big time and just kind of nodding their head because they knew I was going to enjoy, you know, finally kind of putting a crossing the T on this one, because I've been giving Kevin a hard time. You know, what are you guys chasing around up here? What's going on? What is this going on? But what I thought was really amazing was the fact that as amazing as the video was, I wish everybody in the community could have seen because I read all of nobody behind me was happy because I read the whole chain of emails before I watched the video. I like context. I don't just go right to the meat and click the thing. I want to know what am I about to see.
How many emails were in that chain?
There were numerous between the operations officer on the Princeton and the operations officer on board the Nimitz, discussing all of
context. Sorry, just because I don't know. What is the operations officer? What are they in charge of? What do they do on the ship?
So the operations officer, using the phrase, is in charge of operations on the ship. I mean, where the ship is going to go, what it's going to do, almost everything that occurs on board that ship having to do with tactical movement, strategic operations, etc. So the operations officer that's someone who's in the pipeline for command for sure. So they're going to interface with all of the other departments to include, like if there's a supply, if we're having an underway replenishment at sea where the ship pulls up alongside of a tanker and matches speed and sends over fueling lines and then sends stores over via helicopters that are switching place. We're the only Navy in the world that does that as their main means of taking on fuel, because it's actually safer for our population for us to go away and fuel at sea in a dangerous way than it is for us to fuel in, say, like the Oakland shipyard or in New Jersey or something like that.
Right.
So
what were the emails? What was being said in that chain before you popped it open?
Yeah. Pardon me. So they were all the prosaic examples that you might hope for from a couple of really well-trained people that were trying to figure out what they were seeing. So temperature inversions, flocks of birds, ice crystals, all kinds of stuff. They were
rolling those out. They were
they were right there as highly trained, highly educated postgraduates in most cases, highly trained professionals that were trying to figure this out. And, you know, because again, none of us have a UFO to say, oh, there it is, that's real. Now, other than this is the closest we've gotten for a lot of us so far.
Well, what I loved about it was I always find it really fascinating when we get the cockpit recordings. Like, to me, that's the best part, because the reactions from these guys who are insanely trained is what I find interesting, you know, because that's real-time reaction. That's for me. I mean, I love radar data, of course, but I'm not a radar technician. I don't know how to read that stuff. You know, I'll look at it, and I'll try to understand it as best I can. But you guys are the professionals. You guys are the ones saying, "Hey, you need to look at this. This is interesting." And so, you know, when those guys are saying, "Hey, you know," with the cockpit recordings, the thing that struck me, and I wanted to ask Lou this, was the first couple on the gimbal video. He said, "That's a fucking drone, bro." And then they said something along the lines, I wrote it down, I think an LNS. Is that right?
So,
That's an LNS. What's an LNS? That's what I wanted to ask. Do you know what that is?
Well, I can't remember what that is, but man, I can't remember. I think that was the system they were. I think that was the system they were looking on, or I think that was the track, the way it was being tracked.
I mean, because he said it twice. He's like, "Oh, that's an LNS. That's definitely an LNS." I'm like, that's the only.
I can't remember. Somebody will be able to,
of the recording where I was like, well, he did say it was a drone. I mean, it's
but let me tell you why he said it's a drone for sure. Because what you're never going to hear a pilot say is there's a UFO. Right. Because if what he's going to do is immediately sum up what the class of aircraft is. So what he probably saw was something that he classified as an unmanned vehicle. And that's what the word drone means. It doesn't mean, when he's using that word, it doesn't mean me flying my Mavic around. No,
that's not what I meant. I was thinking of an unmanned aerial vehicle. I mean, a Mavic. Sure. If our F-16 pilots are getting confused with a Mavic drone, we got a lot of problems.
Honestly, I wish someone else could pull up. I can't remember what LNS was. That wasn't totally my swim lane. I don't know.
I mean, that's why I said it was a question for Lou. I couldn't get to it. The dude was so tired. I felt so bad. Right. But okay, so then, Jesus, like, I just love how you talk about the operations officers and sort of how they're in line for command. So this clearly went all the way up to the captain.
Oh, absolutely. The captain, our captain at the intelligence briefing that night gave it 5 seconds of, we had, when the PowerPoint that night started, a little like Mars Attacks style. This is, mind you, this is 2004, so it's a big deal to have something fly across the screen on a PowerPoint back then. But they had a little GIF fly across, or a little, and of people who were going, "Why are we laughing?" And so the rest of us were going, you know, we think we chased some UFOs around, and there's a video going around of them on gun camera footage. It's pretty cool stuff, blah, blah, blah. And then the captain goes, "All right, everybody settle down. You know, we had some fun this week. I think we all enjoyed ourselves. Moving on." And that was it. There was never anything. Yeah.
Is the most amazing part of all of this. Yeah. Is that it is treated with, okay, we got our giggles out. Everybody got everybody over it now. Okay, let's get back to work. Why do you think the attitude is that way?
To me, it's simple, coming from, you know, because my job as the Chief Master at Arms was to enforce good order and discipline. I reported directly to the executive officer, but directly to the command. It's funny, we say directly to the commanding officer via the executive officer. But my authority comes directly from the commanding officer. In that case, I've seen these folks. I know how they operate. I've seen the different flavors of commanding officer and executive officer, and how different folks make decisions. The cowboys, the thinkers, the heartfelt ones who are your team guys, all of that stuff. In this case, what I measured was someone who did two things. Number one, he looking back, he did know more than the rest of us. So first of all, there was an aspect of this that was, let's get on with business. You don't need, there's a lack of need to know here. At the same time, though, I imagine after an entire career, he dealt with things like this before. There was nothing about this that was going to make tomorrow's underway replenishment, stores coming on board, and training exercises that we had to go to. This was not going to make people concentrate on the already dangerous work that they needed to do. So he did what any smart leader would do. He nipped it in the bud immediately, and he threw out what people weren't going to be able to have any more info on anyway.
Let me ask you this. Do you think the captain was having a different conversation with higher ups about it?
I have my own impressions that I keep to myself for the most part, because and I'll expand on that in a second, but the reason I keep them to myself is it would be too easy for some people to triangulate individuals that I'm talking about based on their positions. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to out anybody on this subject that isn't interested. At this point, you would have, if you're Princeton crew in 2004, you probably heard about what Voorhees, Cahill, Day, and Turner, and and whomever else are all talking about. If you were on Nimitz, you probably know PJ and other folks like that by now. So if folks haven't spoken up, I don't want to just suddenly say it was Bob who did the following, and someone's like, wait, I know who that is. So right. I did feel like I feel like our captain, and our captain has made it clear that he doesn't recall the event. He's a little, he was a senior captain at the time, and this was a while ago. So I don't want to speculate beyond that, but he doesn't recall the event. And at the time, I'm sure that he had an understanding that there may have been programs in existence that were interested in data. Mm-hmm. And none of us had a need to know that. It really is that simple, and so did he have insight as to what that thing was, whose it was? I don't think so.
No. Yeah.
No, none whatsoever. Well, I think we're finding out that very few people ever even knew that occurred. None of us went and talked except for somebody popped up, I think, on Above Top Secret on that website. I don't know what year. Somebody yanked it and took it with them and talked about it or something like that. Or there was a German website. I don't know.
Somebody had a good question here. Let me just find it real quick. It was something like, what caught your attention first? The acceleration, the speed, the temperature, or the radar of this object?
Well, for me, it was the movement. If they mean what caught everyone's attention at first, it was radar. Mm-hmm. Kevin had anomalous thing. There's been a lot of exaggeration and some hyperbole with it. I think some of it even by myself in the past, and people talking about hundreds of them raining from the sky. They weren't quite that prolific. Yeah. I think there were only a few, and maybe in many times only one. But they were coming from on the radar. They were showing a tangible track that was coming from extremely instantaneously down the deck. And simple put, we all know now there's nothing that can do that we're aware of other than these anomalous things that we're seeing so far. So yeah, that's how it started. It started on radar. And go ahead.
No, I was going to say, because you were talking about radar, the most interesting thing I found about, because the thing about seasons 1 and 2 of Unidentified is there is a lot of things that are revealed in that show that for some reason everybody kind of just blew past. And one of the things that was said on that show that I flipped out was the radar system and its capability and what it can do. And in short, basically this radar system has the capability of tracking something the size of a baseball 60,000 feet in the sky. Not only that, but it puts it on a 3-dimensional battlefield for you. So I'm thinking about this radar. I'm like, Jesus Christ, that was 2004. What kind of radar system do they have today? There's a lot of stuff like that was revealed. And I just found that to be like, holy cow, dude, why is nobody talking about that? Because I always want to believe, and somebody has this question here, and I'm a big Occam's razor guy. I talked about it with Lou. Part of me wants to really believe that this is something that humans have figured out, that we've cracked an anti-gravity or gravity making machine, and We just don't know how to use it yet, and it's just too early to apply it on a military aspect. But then I look at the budget for, this new manless and manned B-2 stealth fighter type plane that has a $500 million per plane budget, and it looks exactly like the stealth fighter. And I'm like, okay, well, where's the upgrade here? Where's the tech that everybody is talking about, that that we have and that we've recovered? Like, for me, if you gave the military a ship of these capabilities, it wouldn't be long, I'd say. And when I say it wouldn't be long, I'd say maybe 25, 30 years tops before we started seeing that kind of movement, those kind of abilities when it comes to transmedium travel, when it comes to hypersonic and temperature inversions. We would see something like that on these planes and ships that we have today. I know, like the F-22 Raptor, the helmets give you the capability of literally looking through your plane. That's wild. I'm sure there's cloaking devices and things that we haven't been told about or haven't been revealed publicly. I love talking about the drones, like the drone capabilities, the swarming of drones. That's something that the military has been playing with for 15, 20 years. And that would explain a lot of UFO sightings, especially if you can, recreate a Boeing 747 with 300 drones flying through the sky. Like, I can understand how that tech can be confused for a UFO.
Mm-hmm.
So I like to play with Occam's razor, but at the same time, it just doesn't fit. Occam's razor doesn't fit with a lot of the things that these craft are displaying. And again, if it's Occam's razor, if it's our tech, then why haven't we seen any of these things with an American flag on it, on the side of it? And it leads to this question, which is, do you believe that these objects to be of non-human intelligence? If so, will the public ever be provided with good data that can conclusively show that these objects are not from human origin? I mean, this is complete speculation. You can't answer this question. Nobody can. It's an impossible question to answer. But do you have a theory?
I wouldn't say I have a theory, only because I'm a nitpicker with words. I would say I do have my own hypothesis.
That's a better word, hypothesis.
And it centers around, and watch me tiptoe up to this one.
Yeah.
Because it centers around the fact that this is an unknown. Now, we all throw Occam's razor around. I can't remember it, so I was going to try to be cute and challenge everyone to tell me what the corollary to Occam's razor is, because there is one. Like, I just can't remember. But
I can't remember. That's for damn sure. Glad you didn't answer that question.
This has been around for a long time. Lou likes to talk about the reports about the Eclipos, the Roman shield, which, if you're not clear, that's a circle, and so they were seeing flaming circles in the sky. These have been going on, not just starting in 1947. I mean, we have to, if this subject has been eclipsed by, for lack of a better word, either disinformation or at best, it was never encouraged. If it that's the case for most of our history. There's no point in history where unlike other social norms that come and go, there was never a time when everyone believed in UFOs, unless you're one of those folks that's gonna go back to the early proto-Indian cultures with Vimana and other really kind of out there historical ideas that we can't take as fact as a full society. We don't have all the same information on that. We disagree as to those components. But it's not a self-identifying group of flesh and blood people that I'm aware of. So to assign it intelligence, I think a lot of us are like, there seems to be something more than a bird that's on autopilot living its bird life, or something that is that's a Roomba with a bigger mission,
right?
we're all getting this kind of idea that there's something that we find familiar in the intelligent motion and range of these things. So I'm always really careful with that. Now, there's a lot of people with wild speculations, and when I say wild speculations, I don't think that a what's the word I'm looking for? A breakaway culture. I don't think the idea of a breakaway civilization means that it has to be human, and I don't think that it means that it has to be alien. You know, we have a lot of things that we are going to have to come back around to defining together. Are we willing to say that something that evolved on this planet, does it have as much right to it as we do? How are we going to deal with that if it's something that's from here that is just running circles around us all of our existence? You know, and so when people say non-human, I have assumptions that it's non-human. I think my general assumptions are that it is most likely non-human, because I just can't figure out how you would manage to keep this under wraps for the, et cetera. You know, there's some secrets, or that would be.
Well, there was something, and if I'm not mistaken, I believe it's redacted, put this video out of what people over the centuries have seen in the skies. Mm-hmm. And in the, you know, I think it was the late 1800s, if I'm not mistaken, people described an airship with, you know, big propellers and, you know, people drinking on board. And it was like a Victorian blimp in the sky, you know, like this beautiful thing. And, you know, a ton of people saw these things. They drew them, they painted them, they talked about them. And now flash forward to, you know, 2004. It really, I mean, the 40s, you know, you get cylindrical, metallic, tic-tac, you know, discs. And it almost feels like, you know, in sort of the theory put out there, or the hypothesis is, maybe whatever this phenomena we're dealing with is filtering itself to whatever is in the zeitgeist or pop culture. And it's, you know, going back to that subconscious level thing, you know, maybe we can communicate with these things through a subconscious level and actually at a meditative state. You know, I don't completely throw that out the window, but when you start talking about things like this, I mean, look, we don't know what the hell we're talking about. So we can't throw anything out the window, no matter who the messenger is. And just because the messenger is, you know, a nutball, doesn't mean that what he's saying is totally wrong. It's like, you know, I love this example of, you know, people who have a persecution complex doesn't mean they're not persecuted. You know, like just because they have this feeling that they're always being picked on or yelled at or whatever. And so, yeah, you know, like I don't want to throw anything out the window, but I just find it fascinating that that we're talking, you know, like the Earth is 60 billion years old, something like that, maybe older. You know, I love this idea of a lost civilization, and when you're looking at Zechariah Sitchin and they start talking about the Egyptian pyramids and how old they really are and how far back, and they can tell by water erosion, you know, like this thing's been around a lot longer than what we think, and sort of this idea of the, you know, yeah, it's only 2,000 years old is just insanity.
I find a lot of that very interesting. I find I'm well versed in it as well. I find a lot of it very entertaining.
Yes.
But we have to really caution ourselves not to view that through a lens of confirmation bias, of wanting things to fit into a really cute worldview. Let me back up a minute, because I know that we're speaking conversationally and casually, and most of us, if we were not being recorded or on a show, wouldn't pay attention to anything. And I know I'm not chastising you at all, but like when you're describing people who who are what society might call a nutball,
right?
You know, and I'm going to take the hit. I'm one of those folks for a great swath of the population, just by virtue of being a meditator or a UFO witness or someone who is willing to move within these circles. And the thing that my major thing that I want to do is get you, me, and everybody else to stop immediately assuming the nutball status. That's that stigma that we keep talking about. And again, I'm not busting chops.
No.
Great,
Hey,
because we can look it in the eye.
Yeah. Hey, listen, you're right. You're right.
Yeah.
Like, you're right.
No, for real. And so we, and this is, this is the first time I've ever went, I'm speaking directly to UFO Twitter tonight. Right. But it's like, we have that ability to start the conversation that doesn't lead with the trigger of stigma. So a lot of folks have been in this community for a long time, and I don't think I am the new sheriff in town by any way, shape, or form. I appreciate the graphic. I get it. It's a good joke, but you and I are, that's tongue in cheek.
Right.
I'm not that cat. I'm the cat who wants to say to everybody, hey, if it didn't work before, if everybody didn't already know what we all already think we know and are sharing in our chat rooms and our Facebook groups and on Twitter, we need help educating everybody else without scaring them away, because we are those weird folks who spend money in some cases on these conferences that our families and friends and folks don't get. So as right as a lot of us think, know, or feel we are, we have to consider the perspective that the support and validation we want is coming from people who do think this is crazy still.
Yeah. I agree with you. I do have a little pushback.
Sure.
And that would be just, I think you're right. I think throwing names out there like nutball is probably unfair, because it's not a good place to start from.
But it's colloquial. We all know what we're talking about.
Yes.
We have to be able, we're not using a pejorative term that should trigger folks really here. We all have to come to the table over this.
No, for sure. And just to agree with you, it's like, starting this channel was a nutball thing.
Sure. Right? Oh yeah. Yeah. Good context.
Thing, and when I go into a Zoom chat with 20 other dudes, and we're playing poker on a Friday night, it's always with a wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Hey, Lou, did you hear about the old la 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 la? And then I've got to try and scientifically explain myself and put validity to what I'm saying, because I immediately put on my, well, I'll show you motherfuckers, like I'm not, I look, man, I'm finally living in an age where I can talk about this openly, and I don't give a shit anymore. I think it's just because I'm getting older. I don't care. And I know, and I was just listening to Redacted today, and they had a really interesting interview with a gentleman named Larry. I can't remember his last name. But this idea that the stigma is dying around this, it's we could talk about this, because guess what? The CIA, former CIA director is talking about this. Former majority Senate leader is talking about this. Pilots are now allowed to talk about this. But yeah, no, I don't like being hit with that. You're a nutball. You're a nutball. So yeah, you're right. I shouldn't be throwing that around, But
I'm not trying to virtue signal
I know you're not. But you're kind of like making me go, yes, Lou. Like just watching your videos, like you got to check your shit before you start calling out other people's shit. So that's good advice. It's just my pushback to that again would just be, man, this guy's ripping people off. He's done amazing work, and I think we should take all of that. I tell people all the time in this field. And I'm sorry, I'm bouncing all over the place. But I tell people all the time in this field, it is okay to have a what have you done for me today attitude. And if today you're pushing me bullshit, I'm going to call you out on the bullshit. If yesterday the information was wonderful, I'm going to pat you on the back and give you 2 thumbs up. But we have to, in this field, unfortunately, just with all of the charlatans, not loonies, because we just don't know. Nobody knows. But I think you're right. We all have to come to the table. We all have to agree. We have to be partisan. What do we agree on? What's the core belief? You know, and the core of this is that something's in the sky. We don't know what it is. And let's throw as much scientific, you know, know-how, data, and research as we can at it. And
kind of a not well kept secret.
Yeah.
And that's that I like this stuff. I have,
Right.
even if I didn't believe in it, I was paying attention to this stuff. I'd already read, you know, Grant Cameron's books. I knew who Rich Dolan was. You know, just like most of us, I watched, you know, almost every episode of Ancient Aliens, and I found a lot of fun in it and everything else. But I got to come to this subject as a former consumer of it, as entertainment. And then because of the New York Times article, it became real. And because of the skill set that I had and the people I met, I got to pull up onto the freeway pretty quickly in a place where a lot of people had been slogging through traffic for a really long time. And I look at this like, I don't look at this like, haha, suckers, look at me, I got ahead of you.
Yeah.
I'm like, hey, you guys don't realize there's no traffic up here. You know, there's a wide open freeway up here, and we need everybody to, you know, we got to get our heads together. We got to compare our notes, because you don't have to fight the same fight that you used to fight constantly just to try to get up in front of a mic and get taken seriously. So now it's the triage of over 70 years worth of disparate, uncontrolled, compartmentalized investigations. And I'm not even talking about with inside government structure. How many civilian agencies are out there? And I'm not, again, not talking about breakaway civilization, you know, connect the dots 100 ways to make something that happened to you work and make sense. And again, I'm not saying all the people are like that. But the thing is if you line up all of the top stories out there that people are telling and have monetized, they don't all fit in the same universe.
Yeah.
They fit in a really active multiverse like Marvel or something.
Right.
But
right.
I don't know how far out our
wow.
You know,
that makes me think of the question is which is you know, of course, I think everyone's number one hypothesis on this phenomenon, it's aliens, gotta be aliens.
Used to be a good word to use.
For sure. How far off do you think that theory is? If you had to take a guess.
Sure. I think see it, but what I want to do is I want to define it, because a lot of people you'll get a big group of people that are going to immediately tell you, because they've read it somewhere by somebody they trust, that, oh, aliens are going to be the most alien thing you can imagine. That's why we call them aliens. You can't ever imagine what their sensory apparatus. And yeah, I can, because I can look around this spot. Mm-hmm. I don't think we're special. I mean, we're able to classify the stars into a relatively short amount of them. The planets we've found relatively classify into relative groups. So I'm okay with the word alien once we get to the fact that alien just means something we don't have any background info on.
Mm-hmm.
That's alien to me. So I'm okay saying, yeah, it's absolutely alien. I have no clue who's in these things.
Yeah.
But I have no baseline.
Like, are these things even craft? Like, you know, like would it, you know, I think your definition of alien is, that's a good rebuttal, is like, well, anything's alien, you know, like anything that lands in this atmosphere is alien. You know, you crossing a border, unknowingly into another country, you're an alien invaders for sure. You know, I feel I guess just my thing would be is like, whatever people are theorizing, I think they're going to be way off, almost like because humans are way off all the time on theories until they scientifically learn how to repeat the pattern. For example, you know, learning the earth was round and how much travel the gentleman who did by horseback to a whole nother city to make sure that what he was saying was correct, you know, and it took hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years before people were like, yeah, the earth's round, duh. Mm-hmm. And now it almost feels like we're going backwards again. It feels that way, but you know, with the internet, I feel that the loudest people on the internet are the smallest minority when it comes to overall opinion. It's almost like one of my favorite radio hosts of all time. I don't know if you've ever heard of him. His name's Phil Henry. But he does a satirization of radio, and he calls himself on the radio as a different character. It's the most genius thing in the world, and he gets people angry and riled up, and gets him to call this character on the telephone and have an argument with a fake person. It's the most hilarious damn thing in the world, and I think it's relatable. Like here in this situation, I just don't think we have any clue, and when we do find out, we're going to be like, wow, we were way off.
I think if it was easy, we'd already know, and it would just be classified. The classified stuff would be classified. You know what I mean? Like we already, a lot of our physics at a certain level, or our chemistry at a certain level, is classified. And that word in itself, it just makes people's eyebrows go up. And I want to help people understand what that means too. But man, the thing is I talk about baseline a lot, and that like the UFO community, for lack of a better word, or UFO Twitter, or the disclosure activist community, and then portions of the military who have researched and focused on this, even if they can't admit it, the folks are out there. And then, your armchair folks, your experiencers, the whole bit of all of them. If this was easy, we'd know. Yeah. And so it's not. And we've got so many different people trying to tell us exactly what it is. They know who it is, who's behind us, that it's one thing. No, it's two things. No, it's an umbrella. It's a spectrum. They're animals. They're energetic. They're craft. They're this. What if it's everything?
Yeah, it could be. Yeah. Well, it could also be the Matrix, just somebody. It's just a program messing with the program, and a UFO or a werewolf or a vampire is just a program that's gone bad, okay, so I love this conversation. I could go on forever, but I know you've got a family and things. But I wanted to go back to sort of getting everybody on the same page and having the same goal. Yeah. And I talked about this with Lou last week, and Lou Elizondo's on board, which I'm very excited about. And I was wanting to extend this invite to you. So we've got make sure I get this date right, because I've really flip-flop on this date. January, February, March, April 26th, 2021. I have dubbed it the Big Phone Home, and essentially I'm going to be doing a telethon. Live stream all day for 8 hours on that day, talking and calling Congress. And I'm going to invite people from the UFO community, such as yourself and Lou, to call into the show, maybe make a phone call to your local congressman with us here live, and tell us how it goes. I would love, I'm trying to organize Lou Elizondo and Christopher Mellon to write a script for us to follow. A list of demands, things that we want from this 180-day report. I don't care. I said this to Lou last week. I don't care if you're Stephen Greer. I don't care if you're Sean Cahill, Lou Elizondo, Tom DeLong, if you're Linda Moulton Howe. We need you. I encourage. It's redacted. If you guys are listening out there, I would love for you guys to come on board with this and come onto my show that day or before. I would love for you guys to do a live stream from your channel and encourage your listeners and your followers to call in on April 26, 2021 and demand disclosure, whatever your definition of that is, whatever Christopher Mellon, and I really want Christopher Mellon's input, because I think he's the best person to put on paper what those demands should be. And I have a feeling the number one demand is going to be an extension of that 180 days, another 180 days, which people really don't want to call Congress and ask for. But if that's what Christopher Mellon and Lou Elizondo say we need, then that's what we're going to do, because I'm tired of looking at Lou Elizondo's tired face. I want to help these guys as much as I possibly can. And the sacrifice and the vulnerability that you guys have shown on this has been second to none. And so that's my idea. Would you like to participate, sir?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, I'll tell you this: if Lou's doing it, I'm definitely doing it. But even if Lou wasn't, I think it's a fantastic idea. I know there's a lot of people that are behind the hashtag end UAP secrecy, and there's a few others out there. I know Andreas Freeland Stahl, formerly or still from the unidentified, has a new leading effort that I don't have in front of me. It's my next target on my email is to go through some of his information. I know all of these different areas would probably love to support you. I think that's a fantastic idea.
Okay, great.
In fact, mine will be a follow-up with Congressman Vargas because I've already written to him. So
wonderful. Well, what I'm going to do is I'll be following up here in the next couple of weeks once I got a list of people who are on board, and I've got a graphic designer that I'm getting in touch with this week, or I've already had a conversation with her, and she's making us a Coachella type poster. I was like, that was the vision in my head. I was like, I want these names that I'm going to give you to almost be like a list of bands, you know, like the
I'm not wearing jorts and cowboy boots for you.
You don't have to. You don't have to. You don't have to. You can wear your birthday suit if you want. That would be really interesting. That would draw some viewers, right? Like, we got to get as many people on board to call Congress, Sean. This is really important, you know.
Car wrecks only draw a few viewers. You don't do that.
Well, I have a feeling there'll be some ladies out there that would like to see the birthday suit of Sean Cahill. Maybe some fellas too. Who knows? Okay. So we got you on board. I'm happy about that. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to put this StreamYard link into the chat here. And if you guys want to call in, you want to talk about something, you're more than welcome, free to call in. You're not going to pop up right on the screen. There's a couple things I asked. I'm going to go over the rules again. Please don't be naked. That's rule number 1. Don't be naked. Don't ruin this stream because you wanted to make a naked joke. Number 2, if you're the best thing to be is connected to Wi-Fi. I cannot explain to you enough. Please be connected to Wi-Fi. If you're not, we're not going to be able to understand you. I'm just going to have to cut you off. And then the third thing is whatever you're listening to us on, just lower that. So here we go. I'm going to put it into the chat. I'll give it a couple minutes. Nobody calls, no big deal. But I figured, hey, no other channel does this. No other channel brings, people call, but you never get face-to-face time with these folks. So, if you've got ideas about the big dig, if you got a question for Sean, if you got a question for me, don't hesitate. The next 8 minutes, because I was going to go 2 hours and then let you go do your own thing. But in the meantime, while we're waiting to see if anybody pops in here, can you talk about anything that you're working on? Anything you're excited about? Doesn't have to be UFO related. Could be new album. I don't know, anything.
I tell you what, right now, everything is UFO.
Okay, wait, time out. Sorry. We had first world problems. Sorry. We had first world problems. You completely cut off. I caught you at music. So I want to make sure that we hear what you're working on. So go for it again. Sorry.
I was going to say everything these days is pretty much UFO related to include the music. So the music I've been writing has been to support the vibe of the things that we've been filming, or to support some of the ideas that I use a lot of my music kind of as a therapy, honestly, to deal with some of the larger ideas. And that seems to translate well, at least amongst us, when we're planning. So that's where that comes from. Unfortunately, because of how important authenticity and integrity and the organic nature of this is to us, I would love to tell you what I did on Zooms and who I talked to all today. But I also have a commitment that I've made to folks. This is as close as I can get to hyping something up or being hyperbolic with it. But I'll tell you this, if I felt like I was on a sports team and I had first pick, I feel like I keep drawing the pick again card, and I got the team that I don't know how I ended up with a bunch of equals and professionals where the egos don't exist, and the work ethic is just insanely professional, and the ability to turn around and immediately produce what is going to end up being, in my opinion, what a lot of us have been asking for. Finally, someone who peels all the bullshit off of this as much as they can, and helps inform. Because the thing is the UFO community we need to wake up to the fact that we already got a lot of disclosure. We need the rest of the folks to see that this disclosure has been cracked open, so we can finish the cranking around and get the meat out of there.
Yeah.
But I think that involves campfire style education of people, and people, they don't learn by governmental reports or by reading Wikipedia or encyclopedias or what, a lot of people don't know any of this went down at all yet. So it's not well known. Just because something is in the news doesn't mean everybody else knows. So I can't stress that enough. A lot of people come to me and they're like, when are they going to tell us the truth? I'm like, they already told you the truth. Now we got to work out the details.
Yeah.
So,
well, that's exciting. That sounds really exciting that you just said you guys are sort of peeling off the the bullshit and getting right to the meat of things. So I don't want to go too much into detail, but can you give us sort of a time frame of when we might expect to see this project?
Well, we're looking to move very quickly. We just came back from some preliminaries. We've had a lot of logistical meetings and things like this, and we think we have a plan that makes sense. So I think that you'll start seeing probably pre-production data within the next few months, possibly that early, where people will start to get a better picture of what's going on. And the fact is we're going to try to remain as accessible as possible. We need the people that support us to help drive this. Yes, we have our own ideas. I shy away from the word agenda. We talk a lot about utilizing certain things as means to bridge between, because I think a lot of us understand that if we're going to bring folks along on this to set some baseline for expectations, it's got to start a little bit slow. Not we're already, as Lou said, we're firmly in second gear, but that vehicle has to pick up speed without spilling every drink inside, knocking all the stuff that's on the back windshield over, waking up the baby and everything else. We're not into fifth gear. We're not on the Autobahn, So we still have to teach some folks. And I know a lot of us that are in this community are like, no. We're done with the kindergarten level. We need the real stuff. And I'm like, I don't know what that means. And if you got it, holler. I'd be happy to help insert it into the project.
Yeah.
But from my standpoint, we're going to have to go out and probably try to replicate some data before it's going to find its way all the way out of the annals of history.
Yeah. No, that's for sure. That's going to be the day we can replicate data is going to be the day this is going to have a massive step forward. I think if we could replicate data, that would probably be a shift into third gear. From a scientific standpoint. Okay, so we've got a question here on the board, and don't be shy, guys. You can definitely call in. The link to the StreamYard is in the chat. So, but if you're too shy, I totally understand. Don't worry. You can also write in your questions. And I'm sorry, Christy, and everyone who asked questions earlier in the chat, ask them again, please, so that way we can get to them. So here's one from Preston. Will disclosure have an impact on our day-to-day lives? You'd imagine if there was a revelation of ET intelligence, then we really would have to rethink society and our role. I'd like to stop working. Okay, look, I'd like to answer this real quick. Alejandro Rojas did a wonderful lecture on religion and UFOs, and it goes exactly into that question you just asked, and they're ready for it. Long story short, religions are ready for this. They're ready to explain it religiously. They've thought about it for many, many, many years, and it wouldn't be as a big a life change as people think. I don't think it would, the world would stop working. People would still go to work. The economy wouldn't stop moving. The only thing that would it would take an event of like the level of something landing on the White House lawn, and coming out, almost like the movie, the day that the Earth stood still. That would be the only real, event where people would stop everything they're doing, kind of like on 9/11. That'd be that's the only other day I can sort of somewhat relate to where the world just stopped. Everything was not functioning for almost that whole day. But the very next day, things started getting like, I still had to go to work. I still had to go do my thing, even though there was 2 massive holes in the ground for years. So do you have a question, or do you have an answer for that question rather?
That would imply that I have more insight into what that means, or what it means. But I partially agree with you. But I often say that proof is personal. Until we have that craft, until there's that White House lawn event that we all, wish would just, somehow happen in a non-destructive manner with drop a leaflet down, tell us what's going on.
Be careful what you wish for.
Sure. No, absolutely. No, you're right. But I think that what we're going to find is, I often say proof is personal. I think there are implications and cascade ideas that fall out of some of these in a psychological manner that, from my experience, a lot of people haven't tackled all of these questions yet, and they haven't tackled what they mean to them and what their meaning is in this world and what their place is in the greater scheme of things. So while I think that, pardon me, because I could get a little side eye for this, but while I think that all religions are prepared to roll this in and make it make sense for their constituents and their tithers, that doesn't mean that they're all right. Because if they knew what was going on, they should have told us before.
Yeah.
Just like everybody else, that we assume the government knows what's going on. I don't necessarily think that they do.
Well, they've got a lot more information than we do, though, right?
Certainly, I agree with that, and we all need that. We all need as much of that information. And people get mad at me when I say this, but some information isn't safe to give out. People don't like that, and I start conversations about it often to try to get the point across that some information is dangerous. And I know people say, well, we'll be the judge, and I'm like, we may not have time to be the judge before somebody utilizes it against us, and we go back through this all again.
Well, part of me feels like, if this was a phenomenon that has presented itself on that level, I would assume, and maybe this is a big assumption, is a big leap, but that other governments and other foreign powers also have information and data on these objects, and
I'd be happy to say that's a fact.
That's a fact, right? And so
on.
Like, I find it hard to believe that not one of France kind of did. France put out a study, and this has been out for a long time. But I find it a little weird that a major foreign power hasn't been like, yep, these things are real. Here's everything we know. I'm just shocked. I especially like, I don't know what the foreign policy implications with that. I'm not, obviously we're doing this live, so I really haven't thought about what the implications of, say, China came out and said, yeah, the United States has been lying to you the whole time. Made it look like, we're the bad guys, and yeah, we'll be more than happy to share this information. Here it is. Here's a report. I'm afraid that, a superpower like that maybe beat us to the punch, Do you think
their evidence is going to have to fall under the exact same peer-reviewed scrutiny as anyone else? And if that's the case, we're going to have the whole world's forensic, academic, and research community swoop down on that data immediately and pick it apart. And the mental gymnastics required to make the conspiracy that makes some of these things happen. I talk about the difference between playing chess and checkers and Connect Four all the time, just like a lot of us do when it comes to thinking ahead.
Yeah.
But man, that's just Machiavellian science fiction level nonsense. Right. You got to think to make it work.
Right.
So I think the easier answer is they don't know, man.
Yeah.
And these 5 observables that Lou Elizondo and the other folks in there have brought out and taught us about that they take so seriously, those 5 observables tell you that we don't know either. And so I think that you've got all these, dude, I'm going to pick on Argentina because it's awesome. I love the terrain. It's a beautiful country. I'd really like to go visit.
But also, we kind of gave them Project Blue Book to follow, and they've been reporting all of those findings to us.
Okay, they're a bad example. Excuse me. Maybe I was Freudian as hell. No. Seriously. Yeah. Let's pick anybody that we don't think was helping us with it, because they're a bad one. They're obviously part of.
Well, I was going to say that was Argentina specifically. Was it? I think season 1. No, it's okay. It's okay. But you know what that made me think of? Just going back. I'm sorry, real quick, to sort of the things that people missed in that show. That was one of them. And the second thing was the Italian helicopter that was attacked. Hello. They had pictures of it. I mean, like, hello. I mean, hello, people. Why are we not talking about those cases and those facts? It's right over everyone's head.
There's also, and there's 2 people, at least 2 people that are on disability for proximity to these craft. The Italians told us how to hit one. You know, how many of these other details do we need to put in the same place on the buffet and invite everyone to come and say? So that's what I want people to also understand, is a lot of this info's out there. People aren't fighting.
When people say, well, when's disclosure happening? When's it happening? Well, hello, did you see the fucking airplane wing of the Italian helicopter? Did you hear their Air Force commander? I mean, like, what more do we need than these videos and that confession? It's just like, dude, we're already in it. We're in it. We're in the midst of it. And I always use this quote. It's my favorite quote, and it's a Lou Elizondo quote. Disclosure is not going to be an event. Disclosure is a process. It's a process. And this is, think of it as just like the example you use, Sean, a gearbox in a race car. We just shifted in the second gear. We still got 4 more gears, and sometimes in other cars up to 12 gears. But I doubt you would have a manual, unless it's a truck. Are we driving a semi? Anyway, let's get to Christy's question here. Does he, and I mean thinking that means you, Sean, have a hypothesis about why the encounters are happening more frequently, especially to military? Does he think the phenomenon is trying to make itself known?
I don't profess to have any idea what the intentions of the phenomenon are, but my hypothesis around any perceived increase in sightings, to me, seems to coincide with various advances in detection technology that we've had. It does seem that the level of technology of the phenomenon, for lack of a better word, seems to just ride this wave ahead of our detection ability. And at times we seem to push past that and I'm willing to, in research wise, go back to 1947. I don't want to talk about the event, but we know what I'm talking about. But the same kind of things pop up in a lot of stuff over and over again. So is this the next question from Christy right here?
Yeah, this is the next question right here. Also, does he believe that humanity really controls disclosure, or might be the phenomenon be controlling it? I mean, these are questions that are hard to answer.
Yeah. Well, are you controlling the release of my middle name, or am I? You don't know my middle name, I assume. So if I haven't told you my middle name yet, then I'm the one controlling it. So if the government knows who these people are, then they're one of the aspects controlling that. I don't think they do, because no offense to the experiencer community, but I can't get 5 experiencers to tell me who they're in communication with, and the all of the details that most people would be like, well, where are they from? What do they look like? All of these things. I can't discern a lot of data from the witness statements based on that without physical data to corroborate it against. We have a lot of people who tend to agree with each other, but at this point, the zeitgeist has gotten so big, the ability to track down who's read books that informed them of these things and who's having aberrations in consciousness or their dreamscape. There's so many things that I think play into people's perceptions of what is a UFO, what is a quote unquote contact with others, or those kinds of things, that we need to categorize them. We need to, have a taxonomy for them, like any other possibly natural science might. Biology lends us a lot of great ways to do that. So do the other natural sciences. That if we approach,
I was gonna say, it almost sounds like this topic needs a curriculum.
Yeah, it does. It needs a new curriculum. It needs to be. The thing is it doesn't need to be a new science, because there's no such thing as ufology. There's nowhere to go get that degree and stuff like that. But what it does need is, before it's ripped apart again and thrown out to academia and the corporate world, it does need, and I really hope that our government can lead the way with providing an entity that will last, that can provide a baseline of history and begin somewhere. This 180-day report, once we get it, I think we're in the 140s now, it's going to start that. It's the first thing we've ever been given in broad daylight that we've asked for like this. And it's if we've all started this groundswell of communication and conversation, that's the next place that we're going to hammer our piton in, and we're going to have a base camp on the mountain now. So it's going to be up to us if we're going to get to the summit. We're going to have that report. We're going to be able to look back at the last 100 years and know what's definitely not in there.
Yeah.
And we're going to look at it, and we're going to look at the last 15 years, and we're going to know what's either definitely not in there or in there. And we're going to have to decide whether we're satisfied with it, or whether the plan of action and milestones that comes with it for the future is acceptable to us.
Yeah.
So I think your phone home thing is a great idea. Yeah. We need to, the upper echelons of this are waking up to the fact that this is something that they need to understand to do their jobs correctly. But now the people that are the ones that are voting for us, the constituency now needs to speak up and say, this is important to us. We want you to take it seriously. Go find out what this is and get back to us immediately.
Yeah. And I also want to just remind viewers and everyone who's into this topic, I hate to break it to you guys. Not really, but senators, congressmen, people in high levels of power, they're just as interested as you are. They are just as curious as you are, and they want access to those programs. They want access to those files, and the ones who do have access to those programs and files are bursting at the brim wanting to talk about it. I loved I can't remember who that you shared it was like a DJ mix over a senator talking.
No, that was my music, but I was like, this
that was
Senator
so
Blumenthal's cool. His speech is like, man, pay better attention, folks. I know
he's talking about they. And he's not talking about he was very specific in that. Like, I'm not talking about China. I'm not talking about Russia. I'm talking about them. What? Wait, what? And then you've got, Marco Rubio talking. You got Dan Crenshaw said some things. You've got, Harry Reid, like the guys who are being exposed to this information. They want you to know just as bad as the stuff they already know, because they think it's in your personal best interest to know that. Politics aside, no matter who the hell it is, we're in it. We're in it. We are in it. We're living it.
Yeah. The saying, player 3 has entered the game. Or
yes.
Player 2 has entered the game. There is another player on the board here. And if our military is going, what was that? That bothers me, man. And I'm not a threat narrative dude. I'm just like Lou talks about. If somebody moves my furniture, even if it's an angel, until I find out what the heck that thing is, I'm bothered by it.
Right.
And none of us know what this is.
Yeah. Okay, so let's get to this. I'm hoping one of the last questions here. Get in your questions now, because we're about to end this, guys. So Mr. Sin asks, Ask Sean about his Guadalupe Island sighting from the filming of Unidentified. Why didn't any of that make it to the show?
The History Channel and the folks behind it catch a lot of heck for comments like that I've made. But people have to understand that I've learned this recently too. When a film crew goes out to a location, they get a lot of footage. Yep. Almost every film crew gets almost a disproportionate amount of footage that will never be used.
If it's a 1 hour show, just to give you some insight, because I know a lot about production. I work in television. If it's a 1 hour show, bet your ass they've got 12 hours of footage.
Easy. Yeah, easy. And so Guadalupe, a lot of people have heard some of the stuff I've talked about, and they might be like, that's bombshell stuff, man. Those are incredible accounts. They are, but we also understood that we don't need another bombshell account from a dude standing on a pier who doesn't have a picture, a video, or any of that stuff. The data helped us out as investigators, but it's nothing was like kept from people. But at the time, it wasn't going to properly inform the conversation. It was going to turn off the people who think this is BS, and it was going to turn on the people who think that this is awesome, without us being able to tell a much larger story. So it's been really hard having folks understand where we're trying to fall in this with what we call infotainment. And there's other phrases, them from the business, that I'm just learning them, called like docu-follow and things like that. And in docu-follow, like, the only thing we're doing ever that's rehearsed is like going in the scene, going out of the scene, or if somebody continually starts flubbing the point they're trying to make. That's it. We just go, hey man, go gather your thoughts. We don't tell anybody what to say.
Well, and just going back to your story, because it's a very interesting point, because I've got a story. And I'll get to this in a second. It'll be my last question for you. But I told Lou last week, your personal story is kind of like your fantasy football team. Nobody wants to fucking hear about it. Nobody wants to hear about it,
That's so true.
Especially if it doesn't have any data. Like, if you want to know about my story, of course I'll tell you. I've got no issue telling you. None at all. But it's if you call Congress and you start telling them about your sighting, they're either going to hang up on you, or they're going to go, and never pass along the message that you wanted to get across the. This is why I want to get a script for everybody, because I want everybody on the same page as far as what we're asking for and what we're trying to do. Nobody cares about your UFO story that has no data, that has no radar tracking information, that has no scientific proof that could be tested and retested and tested again, and then it could be reproduced in a lab. Of course, these stories matter. They're personal, and in some cases, they're absolutely wild and out of this world. But if you have a hard time wrapping your noodle around your experience, how do you think the person listening to it is handling it?
Sure. It's hard. I think a lot of people who've been finding themselves comfortable with the in a greater way are usually people, and I'm not shaming anyone here, okay? But are usually people who have found that they wanted to continue climbing up the ladder of emotional intelligence. And so they've learned in some ways that we have to give up some bigger thoughts. Like, there are some things we may never know. It might be our grandchildren that get to find out who these folks are. What if they take a couple hundred years to tell us who they are? I don't, if they're folks. I don't, whatever it is. If there is a reveal coming, I have no clue. But what you have to prepare yourself for, what if disclosure means the government's been studying this and the official report is we don't know what the hell it is either, and the technology's crazy, bro, and we're hoping to fix a lot of problems with it too. I'd be totally satisfied with that.
I think it'd be okay if you shared all of the information that led you to that conclusion. If you just say that without providing anything, I think you're going to have a lot of pissed off people. But you want to know something? Go for it. Because guess what? That might actually motivate your ass to get off the couch and make a phone call. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And I always use this example because people always say, "Oh, well, phone calls don't do anything. You know, what good are they really?" When Barack Obama wanted to put boots on the ground and he wanted to start a war, another war, people were so angry and so tired of war at this point. We had already had Afghanistan, Iraq. We were already threatening Iran at this point, and people were just like, no. And they called. And guess what? Not one bomb was dropped. Not one soldier was put into harm's way. Of course, you know, weapons were provided and money, you know, but at least no boots were on the ground. And the reason why there were no boots on the ground is because people got pissed. They were angry, and they called Congress and they called their representatives, and Congress heard them loud and clear and didn't do it. So it does help. It does help. And I kind of hope that kind of happens where they kind of come out and they say, yeah, these are real. Yeah, we don't know what they are. That's what the report says. We're not sharing anything. Peace. And I love it. Everybody would just go crazy.
A lot of people, you know, when I rant amongst my friends sometimes when it comes to folks who interview Lou, because I go, stop asking the dude questions you know he can't answer, because there's no value in hearing a non-answer from someone,
right?
And especially if you know it.
Yeah.
So I really hope that what people are expecting is a lot of people expect answers. That's what we hear. I want answers. I want the truth. I want to know what they know. And it's like, well, what if you had to get a physics degree to know what they know? What if you had to get a biology degree to understand what has come out of this and have it make context? All I'm asking for people is to consider the fact that we don't know,
right?
Because that's the thing. We got a lot of data, and I think we all understand. We just need to take a few breaths. No one's trying to squirrel this away again. There's active measures that are trying to bring this up. Let's do it utilizing the rule of law and the Constitution and the legal process in the proper way. We just witnessed, and I'm not trying to polarize anyone, but we just witnessed what happens when emotions get out of control in regards to the way we're going to operate this country together.
Yeah.
I know that the forefathers did not write a constitution that wrote a constitution that, while it may have said it respected everyone, it sure as hell didn't act like that. We're still trying to fix the way to make everything that's in there to actually ring true. I think that's the American experiment, is that we said, I want to be like this, and I'm going to start working on it here in 1776, and I'm all jacked up, and I've still got slavery, and I'm going to dominate some of the world, and then I'm going to go and I'm going to hide, and then I'm going to fight a couple of wars, and then I'm going to be, who knows?
The Constitution is really great on paper, just like the 1997 Miami Dolphins. And guess what happened to them? They didn't go anywhere. They sucked. They were terrible.
I love the Constitution. I love it.
I love the Constitution as well. I think it's look. It's.
I think we need to live up to it.
Agreed.
I think we need to live up to it.
Agreed.
And but I want us to learn about this the same way.
You're talking about a complete institutional change, and it would start. I think it would have to start with our police.
Am I?
I think that would have to be.
Hold on. I'm not. I'm talking about constituency and responsibility. The quickest thing any of us can do is recommit to a little civics lesson, especially those in the UFO community. That's all. I'm talking about that small thing that we started this about, is that, like, the UFO community could learn their civics lesson a little bit better. So when they write their letter to their congressman, they're not saying, hey, jackass, I've written you 50 times already, and you never, how about, dear honorable Congressman so-and-so, my name is the following, I'm one of your constituents. Hit him where he lives.
Yes. Yeah. No, you make a great point. I'm just saying from a broader aspect of thing. And when I say like emotion taking over, the mob mentality taking over, I'm thinking of what happened in DC, right? That's sort of where you're going with it. And to change, we're one of the few developed countries that got rid of slavery through a war. and that runs deep. A lot of
the last ones.
Yeah, and it was a deep and bloody war. Most other countries got rid of it with reparations, and doing the things that they said they were going to do. I think that is it's just look, I mean, we could talk about this for a really long time, so I don't want to get too deep into it, but there are a lot of scars left over from that war, and that war, once it was over, the Emancipation Proclamation basically was nullified through laws that were written after it, and they just went basically right back to the same thing. And all of those laws were enforced by the police departments. Police were created to enforce these laws, to keep minorities in check. And so that's when I say I think we need a complete institutional change, but still based off of the Constitution. I'm not talking about a revolution. I just say I agree with you. I think we should live up to those words and try to strive for those things. But the government of the United States is going to have to do a lot of things to win back the trust of that segment of America, and reparations, I think, would be a pretty damn good start, even though a lot of people think that's a wild thing to say. We could just cut the B2 program, which, by the way, costs $1.4 billion, billion. And, you could take that and give people reparations. And I can tell you it's going to win. There's like, again, it's a messy can of worms. There's a lot of stuff to get into here. But I think it's a start. If you want to give people a chance in this country to catch up to where they should be, give them the leg up to do so. Give them the financial freedoms to make those moves, and also back it with programs and education, and making sure people know how they're spending their money and where it's going. And like, I'm not a big fan of Louis Farrakhan, but one thing I found very interesting that he said was, in a Korean community, when a new person comes into that community, they usually stay with a Korean family. They get a job in a Korean store. Those dollars are spent in that Korean community 15 times before it leaves the community. In a Black community, it's spent not even once. It doesn't recycle itself because there's no Black banks, there's no Black realtors, there's no Black, and the reason why these things don't exist is because the laws and the oppression and the years and years and years and years of this just red tape that they haven't been able to get through. So I think that would be a good first step, but let's not get into I got into reparations talk. I don't know how I do this, dude. I just ramble. You got to stop me, Sean.
I looked the belly out there for a minute, man, but then the little red wagon was going down the hill.
Oh, man, I just love talking about stuff like that, man. I love having the conversation. I don't care who it offends.
Well, it's a really good subject to take some clues from if we do want to apply it to greater systems that we haven't been able to find simple answers to. Right. And I think that's if we look around this country specifically right now, we're coming out of a time of great upheaval, and I'm not trying to be pedantic with this. Yeah. Frankly, a lot of us were scared. But as a community, the things that are scaring the people that scare you are you. And we don't realize now that we're scared of each other. And so the things that the person who's scared of a long-haired hippie-ish looking California guy like me, I'm telling you that they're not that way. I'm not the way you think I am. And having spent time in the heartland for the last couple of months, really getting to know folks out in places like Wyoming and stuff like that, I've been able to talk to folks, and we've been able to talk about these perceptions. And I really think that we need to look at each other and have some honest conversations. Dave Chappelle's doing some amazing things like that, where we're bringing hard things out on the table and we're saying, pardon me, folks, but God damn it, this is enough. Yeah. Everybody come out on the block, make a dish from where you come from. Let's all taste it, hang out. Yeah. Because, man, we used to be the melting pot. Now people have convinced a lot of us to go back to our little tribes and to fight for these silly things that I thought this country was trying to overcome.
Yeah.
So I think I'm with you. We need a change, but that change isn't more polarization or making it all one system. We got to find the middle again.
Well, you want to know how I know you're right and that we actually are unified more than people think? Both sides are angry.
Sure. That's a good way to look at it. That's the best time to
are angry.
In the military, we have things we call them safety stand downs. And I was so proud to see that the Navy led, I think, the military with telling their folks, we're going to have, within the next 60 days, we're going to literally, we take a day off of training and warfighting wherever we're able to, and we're going to stop. And the Navy and then the military as a whole are going to address extremism. And I don't care if it's left or right. I don't anymore. We have to all come back to the middle and go, look, we're supposed to be living here together. So if you can't live here without hurting other people, let's bring those issues to the forefront. And let's find out why we can't have nice things anymore here.
Yeah, well, it is wild, man. And I've seen a lot of fun social experiments, especially with online trolls, where the person who is getting ripped from this troll, they get a phone call. They call them. And then you start sort of scratching at the surface of why that person wrote what they wrote. And you don't have to go deep to find, oh, they were picked on in high school, or, oh, they were, they experienced some sort of trauma and this is how they express that trauma. And that they're really at their core, that comment that they make on YouTube or Facebook or whatever, that's incredibly mean and incendiary. When you get to know that person, and you take away the computer or the laptop in front of them, you probably find that they're not that bad a person. And to judge somebody on their worst either phrase or 30 seconds of their life, I feel is foolish,
Reach out a hand.
Yeah, you'd be shocked.
Forgiveness. Practice forgiveness. Consider that person who's standing there is so enraged for the simple fact that, damn it, they're afraid of you and what you stand for. They don't understand where you came from. Let's start with a hug.
Yeah.
And I'm serious, man. You can call me woo-woo all day, but let's de-escalate this crap.
Yeah.
Hey, brother.
And also educate.
Speaking of de-escalating, I'm going to float away down a river of coffee here in a minute. If I
No. We're done. We're absolutely, that was going to be it. But dude, I appreciate you hanging out for, 2 hours and 30 minutes, man.
I promised you I was in for the duration.
What a great conversation. I really appreciate your time, dude. I really appreciate you sharing with us, getting vulnerable. I'm sorry, Douglas, I didn't get to your question, but I think this question is going to be really hard for him to answer. Also, I don't know what you're talking about with this.
I do, and I'm a big fan of Mr. Valle. His idea of a control system is something I'm very interested in. I'd love to disprove it because it gives me the creeps, but it is something I'm very interested in.
I'm not aware of this, so I'm gonna have to look this up and learn more about this. I'm very aware of Jacques Vallée, but I haven't heard this theory here. So thank you for making me aware of it, and I'm glad that you do have an idea. Maybe next time we'll get to answer it. So Sean, again, thank you for coming by.
Quite welcome.
To all of the people out there, Preston, Mr. Sin, Christy, It's Redacted, Simone, Bushi, Marco, you guys, you mean the world to me. Absolutely mean the world to me. I want to say thank you to our sponsor, BlueMarlinChronicles.com, purveyors of the world's finest fishing tackle since 1995. I want to say thank you to DOS Tapes. They provide all of the music you hear on the show. Their SoundCloud link is in the description below. And that's it for me today, you guys. Thank you so much for coming aboard and getting weird with me here on another episode of the Unidentified Celebrity Review, your home for credible news, reviews, and commentary on everything UFOs. My name's Luis Jimenez. Until next time, you guys, stay safe out there. Peace.